the people are doing. So today we're comparing the X90 Pro, a beautiful flagship from Vivo. I mean, it does look really nice with the much better looking camera module as opposed to the X80, to a smartphone, the Xiaomi 13 Pro, which has a camera module that looks literally like nothing. I wish it was a joke. It's not. Man, I don't know. It looks like nothing. That's all I can say. That's the best way to describe it. Literally nothing. I don't know who decided on this, but I must say Xiaomi had some balls to put out a camera module like this. It's beyond the definition of simplicity. If that's something they were going for, well, mission accomplished, I guess. I'm gonna tell you right now, if the Xiaomi 13 Ultra doesn't show up in India or other countries like what happened last year with the 12S Ultra, man, Dad is gonna be pissed. But look, right now we have the 13 Pro in hand. It is a good camera, a really good one, and the price range is similar, so I guess the comparison still stands and it still works. So let's jump right in. So let's just get one thing straight. Both of these phones, they come with some form of natural or authentic color profile. The Xiaomi 13 Pro is like authentic. The X90 Pro, on the other hand, has nice natural colors. Now, out of these two, only the X90 gives you genuinely natural looking colors, and it's pretty obvious right here. Yes, the X90 doesn't look all that appealing, to be entirely honest, but it's not exactly natural on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. It's not realistic colors that you're getting. They are saturated, they are being exaggerated. Yeah, a lot of people like it, no doubt about that. That's not what I'm debating here. I'm just saying that objectively, the X90 Pro is the one that looks exactly like the conditions that I shot in, the colors that I saw with my own eyes. So yeah, it is more natural. I do like the slightly higher contrast on the Xiaomi 13 Pro though. Now this is like a vibrant, as you can see, slightly lower contrast, which not the biggest fan of it, but the colors are being exaggerated even more. Not too much, at least in this case. There have been cases in my testing and in various camera comparisons I've done before. You can check it out, link is in the description. And yeah, in those cases, the vibrant was, well, really vibrant. Now, if that was really the only difference, I would still be using like authentic. Yes, it's not as natural as the X90, but it has higher contrast, so I'll be fine with it. I would definitely use it, but I don't. Simply because it's pretty obvious the Xiaomi 13 Pro completely crushed the shadows. And it doesn't look authentic. That much I can tell you right now. The X90 is doing a tremendous job. With Zeiss Natural Colors, it looks really good. But then if you turn off Zeiss Natural Colors, as you can see, really saturated image on the X90. Like, it is vibrant, it is popping. And on the Xiaomi 13 Pro with like a vibrant, now we're getting a lot more shadow detail. We still have a lot of contrast, which I don't mind. In this case, I think it's a bit too much. I prefer the overall balance on the X90 here. A little bit more, just in this case. But yeah, we really are just stuck with like a vibrant in daylight shots, at least. At night, things are a little different. But we'll get there in a moment. Now let's test out the zoom. So this is obviously 1x zoom on both phones, and wow, both of them look bloody identical here. It's yeah, really not much of a difference here, is it? Just goes to show how similar these phones can be when the situation isn't exactly challenging. Now this is 2x zoom, and the X90 does a better job here because it's optical zoom on that, and not so on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, although the detail difference isn't exactly monumental or anything like that, but it is there. 3x however, or 3.2x to be very precise. Yeah, the Xiaomi obviously has more detail, but the X90 is keeping up. Like, it's surprisingly good with zooming in from the telephoto, because the telephoto's quality is very good on the X90 Pro. It's one of the biggest upgrades on the X90 Pro thus far. It has its downgrades, we'll get to that obviously, but yeah, the upgrade is really good. Because at 5x, as you can see, both of them have very similar levels of detail. I don't think the Xiaomi is a touch sharper, touch less processing that I can see. Like, it's a minor difference, and I'm looking at it on a larger display, and I also pixel peeped a little, naturally. Not the biggest difference in the real world, but anyways. The ultrawide camera, now this is where things are going to be a little interesting. So, I mean, first and foremost, I am using like a vibrant because why wouldn't I? It's the only mode that gives me reasonably good shadow detail, although in this case I think it's a little too dark. Like, it looks nice, but the X90, you can see it gives you the normal brightness. I would have liked more contrast on the X90. kind of like we have on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, but I do think that the overall exposure could be higher on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. Now this one is slightly backlit. As you can see, it was a bit of an overcast situation, so not exactly a ton of sun to work with, but regardless, I think both are just doing a really good job here. I really have no complaints because both of them look good. The Xiaomi with like a vibrant looks surprisingly natural because it's very similar in the colors as opposed to the X90. So yeah, it's good news for now. The ultrawide camera has a bit of an issue on the X90, we'll see soon enough. Well, not this one obviously, the problem is coming later. This is just a little screw up on the X90's part. Essentially, the processing didn't really kick the HDR up into high gear. it didn't really work out. The Xiaomi is doing a tremendous job, like it looks really good given the situation. It's basically perfect. Now of course, macro, well, macro is it's a little different for both. So normally when you just move towards a subject, the cameras will automatically switch over to their macro mode if you've just kept it on auto. And the Xiaomi 13 Pro's ultra-wide macro is not good. Just don't even use it. If you get close, it will switch to this by default, which I don't know why they use this macro mode and not the good one. We'll get to the good one. But yeah, it's pretty obvious the X90 can get much closer and it has really good macro capabilities now. But if you use super macro on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, it uses a telephoto camera, which gives you just a very different result. Yes, the Xiaomi's telephoto super macro mode can get closer to the subject, which is just incredible. I do like that. And the depth of field is insane with the telephoto camera, and you can see the focus is super shallow and it just falls off immediately. I'm a huge fan of that. Now then, high resolution, and wow, that saturation is just ridiculous on the X90. It's just damn. There's a good reason for it. It's because the X90 doesn't use the Zeiss natural colors with high resolution. I don't know why there's such a odd limitation. It's why I don't use high resolution on the X90, because the colors just look crazy. Just not my thing, personally speaking. But the details, I can't deny the details now, can I? Because both have tons of detail. I think the X90 has a little bit more sharpness in there, just a little, but it's visible at 500% crop. Now the ultrawide camera, see, this is where there was a time, like with the X80 Pro, that Vivo had a really good ultrawide. We had a large, fairly high quality 48 megapixel sensor and it was good. Now we had a downgrade on the X90 Pro, which it blows my mind. It completely just bamboozles me as to why that's the case, but it is what it is. That's why the Xiaomi 13 Pro is doing such a good job here. Now granted, the X90 Pro's processing is good enough to the point that it can handle the lower quality ultrawide in daylight conditions, but as I said, at night things just fall apart. And the biggest difference here is that the Xiaomi 13 Pro, it just has less processing and sharpening artifacts whilst giving us slightly more detail. So that's just, you know, a win-win in my opinion. Now the zoom, see, this is interesting. So what I did here was I matched the zoom ranges, essentially the 2x on the X90 and 3.2x on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, so that I can just test out the level of detail by cropping it to 500%. That's basically the idea behind it, because both of them have the same resolution but different focal lengths. It's a little difficult to test out. But to be honest, the detail difference is not really there. All I can see is that the Xiaomi 13 Pro has slightly less sharpness whilst also having less grain, while the X90 is the opposite. It has a little bit more sharpness but also more grain and noise. And that's really it. You're not really gonna have a ton of difference between the two. As I said, both of them have tremendously good telephoto cameras. Now selfies. See, I personally believe that the X90 Pro has possibly some of the best selfies and most consistent selfies and portraits that you can take. And I don't say that lightly, because I tend to complain and nitpick a lot when it comes to selfies and portraits. However, with the X90, you just constantly get amazing results. This is a proof of concept right here. It's a similar situation right here. The X90 just does a near perfect job. And this is not just in this comparison, it has been doing this across all of the other camera comparison I've done with the X90 Pro. So check them out if you want proof, because the X90's selfies just had a massive upgrade and they needed that. Now of course the X90 also has really good selfie portraits. the Xiaomi 13 Pro selfie portraits are actually much better than the selfies themselves. It's a pretty obvious right here. And I do think the Xiaomi looks a touch sharper in this case as well. Now there's a backlit portrait, and yeah, they are struggling. Obviously you can see the flaring happening on the X90 Pro. It's pretty substantial, as it is on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, but look at the HDR processing. The Xiaomi is not bad in a situation like this. If I got a shot like this, I'd be happy. But then looking at the X90, it blows the Xiaomi out the water, which is a really big deal in my opinion. Now night selfies, I would just recommend that you don't use them on these phones, because as good as selfies are on the X90, the night selfie, the night mode, just sucks so bad. It's horrible. Because the real choice between these two is that either you look like a polished baboon's ass, or you can look like a total grainy mess with no detail whatsoever in either. Now for portraits, well, I think both are doing a pretty good job in this case. I do prefer the overall colors on the X90 a bit more. I think they look a little bit more natural and they just have a more realistic feel, while the Xiaomi looks a touch more exaggerated. That's a minor difference, and it's probably a personal preference. Maybe you prefer the Xiaomi 13 Pro. It could happen, and well, I'm just gonna leave this up to you. But let's face it, in this case, slightly backlit as you can see, and the Xiaomi 13 Pro is struggling. Like it definitely has issues with contrast. We saw a lot of those issues happening with the selfies, and it's happening here as well. It's pretty obvious that the X90 is doing, again, a near perfect job with the balance and contrast. Now the zoomed in portraits, well, I think both are pretty good. Just my issue is with the colors on the Xiaomi. It's a little too saturated. The warmth in the skin is a little too much. Not the biggest fan of it. But otherwise, both are doing a pretty good job. A backlit portrait, however, yeah, now, look, I'll give Xiaomi some credit. It does look really flat, but it is giving us more detail in the shadows. It just, it's a safe image, so to speak, which essentially you can just edit it a little, drop the shadows a touch, and it'll look nicely balanced. The X90 on the other hand, it's basically doing that for you, because if I took a shot like this is exactly the kind of contrast that I would want, just enough to not make it look flat or faded, and that's basically the whole point, isn't it? And well, this is night portraits. I do think that the Xiaomi is doing a better job with keeping things natural, while the X90 is just, it's brightening things up, it's giving us a lot of color. And I do like how parts of my skin look, like especially in the shadows, the skin looks a little bit better on the X90, but mostly I do prefer the Xiaomi 13 Pro. Although I do think that it kind of messed up the background blur, which doesn't really look like it's happening in a lot of places. The X90 is doing a really good job with that. Like, it is blurring it out perfectly, exactly how you want it. Now then, let's move on to night mode. See, this is where things are going to be very interesting. So in regular conditions, yeah, the X90 does a tremendous job. You can see really bright, really detailed, and the contrast is fairly good. But on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, see, this is the one place where you really want to use Leica Authentic if, as the name implies, finally, you want authentic night mode shots. And this is the only place where it really works, because in daylight you saw the problem. That problem doesn't really exist with the night mode. It doesn't make it look overly bright like we very often get on the X90, even in this case. And this right here, it just goes to show why I'm not the biggest fan of the X90's night mode. The bluish skies, the really brightened skies, so to speak, and the lower contrast images we get at night from the X90, a lot of people may not have any real issues with it. I do, because that's just how my mind works, I guess. But now we are using Leica Vibrant on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. Comparatively, it looks way better. But then, when you switch over to Leica Authentic, now you can really tell that this is a nighttime image. You get the proper contrast, and maybe a little bit of the detail in the clouds is lost a touch. And if you have a problem with that, just use Leica Vibrant. But Authentic, man, it looks right to my eyes. Right? Immediately I can tell that's the kind of image I want. I mean, even in a situation like this, which is just inherently challenging, and it would screw up the processing of Xiaomi 13 Pro in general, if you really think about it. It's a backlit shot, so a lot of the shadows might be crushed, but that's really not happening. It's a perfectly balanced image. And look, on the X90 Pro, it's a feat that it can actually bring out so much detail and sharpness in the shadows, like in the buildings in the background, some of the shadows in the foreground as well, but the feel of nighttime, the look of nighttime, nothing really parallels the Xiaomi 13 Pro. Let's just get that straight. There's a pièce de résistance over here because I don't think I said that right, but regardless. Yeah, I think this is like one of the best ultra-wide night mode shots that I've ever taken. I know I'm not the best at framing, I'm still a noob at that even though I take these shots all the time, but regardless, just the quality of the shot is bloody insane on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. Like the sharpness, the noise reduction, and the balance. It's just chef's kiss. Once again, same story, and yes, we had really warm streetlights, so naturally you get that color. Just look at how nighttime-esque the shot looks on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. It is perfectly clean, and this is the ultra-wide camera we're talking about. I would expect some, problems, like maybe some noise in the sky or something like that, but it looks bloody perfect to my eyes. It's a really good ultra-wide camera, and just generally really realistic night mode that we get on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, which is why I'm such a massive fan. I do hope they keep this because it really works. Now zoom is a little bit interesting, so you can use it on both and you can get fairly high quality results, but the problem is that I'm not sure if it's because the X90's 2x zoom can just gather more light, but what I found is that the X90 takes far less exposure. Like in this case it took like 1 second, the Xiaomi had to take full 2 seconds, and with zoom you want to be able to really either hold it still for a fairly good amount of time, or if it takes low exposures then you're not gonna get motion blurs. Even in this case, as was like the 5th shot that I took, I still have some motion blur happening. Now ultra low light, plain and simple, I do think that this is a little extreme condition. I couldn't see anything, and I doubt you're gonna take a photograph of things that you cannot see. So this is just me testing out the maximum capabilities, and yeah, the X90 has tremendous amount of detail, an obscene amount of sharpness, not in a bad way, in a really good way. It's amazingly sharp. And the real problem is that it is brightening up like just a part of the dark part of my painting a little too much, and that just looks a little weird. The Xiaomi is handling that well enough, but in all the other areas it's not quite as good. So I guess both have their pros and cons, and let's face it, this gives you an idea of the extremes, but you're probably not going to take photos in these situations. But then for the moon, so this is where the X90 just takes it by a long shot, for a very simple reason: contrast. And wow, this is really something. The Xiaomi 13 Pro has been struggling with contrast almost throughout the comparison, except for night mode. At night it's perfect, but yeah, in a lot of the selfies and portraits it was messing up the contrast, and in case of the moon, of all the damn things, the one thing where you just almost never mess up contrast is with the moon, but it does here. So with all of that said, well, this is the end of our camera comparison, and I gotta admit, both have their very obvious pros and cons. In daylight shots, selfies and portraits, I sincerely believe the X90 it takes it for me. But then you go to night mode and that's where it falls apart. It saddens me, man. I'm not talking about the main camera night mode. The main camera night mode is fine. It's not as good, at least in my opinion. It is not nearly as good as the Xiaomi 13 Pro with like authentic and the beautiful contrast that we get from that phone. I'm a massive fan, if you hadn't noticed. So the problem is with the ultra-wide camera, I think the biggest problem is that it's not just a bad ultra-wide camera that we have, it's the fact that we downgraded to a bad ultra-wide from a good one that we had on the X80 Pro. That's, I think, the biggest problem. That's why it frustrates me on the inside so damn much. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I hope you found this camera comparison helpful, and well, I'll be seeing you guys sooner with many more to come. Cheers.